Welcome to your Innovating Minds webinar, where we will be exploring the complex relationship between Halloween and trauma. So, the scary things that go on that children see and experience around and on Halloween. And when I say children, this is children of all ages, so from our youngest up until adulthood. It has an impact. So let's have a look at some slides I put together for you and explore this in a bit more detail. And most importantly, the incredible role that you play always in the children's lives, but particularly at key times of the year like Halloween, which I think sometimes we don't necessarily think about it in this way and connect it with trauma, which is why I'm here with you. So here we go. Let's take this dive into this fascinating connection and how it might impact children and young people in ways that maybe we don't always think about. So for yourselves, you matter hugely in the lives of the children and the young people. So, you may never have thought about the relationship that you have with Halloween and horror and images of horror. So if at any point during the webinar something just doesn't feel okay, then please, maybe this is not the time, the day, the moment to watch this webinar. So either stop, leave it alone, or maybe pause it and just do something that for you just brings a bit of settling and safety and calmness into your body and therefore your brain. So for some people, that's taking a few breaths and maybe connecting with their body, but you may have a different way, and that's fine. Okay, so a tiny bit about me. So I work with Innovating Minds. I work very closely with the team, but particularly with Dr. Asha Patel, creating the trauma-sensitive programs and resources. I'm the childhood trauma expert there and the lead trainer. But in the rest of my life, I am a hands-on grandparent, learning all the time through new eyes, because I became a parent 32 years ago and have been on a ginormous learning journey, as one is, but also professionally as well. Worked in domestic abuse services with families, worked in child protective services, worked in very deprived communities, again, always learning with and from the children, the young people and the adults that I've had the huge privilege to work with for many, many years. Nowadays, occasionally pop up on your television, a conference speaker, have done a TED talk around anxiety, have written 4 children's books, so very much led by experiences that I've had with children. So was a respite foster carer for nearly 4 years, and huge learning curve again there. So very practical resources for professionals like you to use with children. Have a 5th book coming out soon, using polyvagal theory as a way to explore parenting. So very practical book. I'm a huge lover of all kinds of fruitcake, buns, anything like that, and of course tea. So what have I learned over the years from the children? And I still work, so I'm also in my private practice, I'm a coach and I often work with parents, and I'm still very much seeing that children who have often had complex starts in life where there's been some violence or exposure to violence, therefore they have experienced the violence, and other traumas, once they get access to screens, they often seek out and seem to be more connected with films and animations and things where there's quite a high content level of aggression and violence. So this is what the children have taught me. And as I say, I used to be a frontline practitioner and definitely would see this years and years ago, even before there was such easy access to things like Xboxes. But nowadays, this is still exactly what I'm seeing, what parents are reporting to me, that their children of all ages, so children, young people, they seem to have this pull towards scary, violent content. And I often wonder, well, is that because the chemistry that gets released, when we watch something, and the physical state and the chemistry of being and feeling scared and horrified, is that more familiar to them? So that's a question, question mark for me, but that certainly seems to be the way. And they seem to have this desensitization. And this is something to be careful about, because that's what we can believe. Oh, because they consume so much of it, it doesn't seem to impact them. I would say that that's impossible. It's impossible for them not to be impacted, but it may become a sort of normal experience for their system. So that in itself is quite complicated, especially when we think about things like Halloween. So there's this chemistry, as I said, and this physiology that comes with, which if you enjoy moments of feeling scared, personally I don't, but many people do, things like going on roller coasters and stuff like that, the thrill and the excitement, because there's a definite end to it, then yes, I get it. But this constant seeking and bathing of the body and brain in it, that's something to be curious about. And where I've ended up is that I just sit in the space of, in some way, shape or form, that seems more familiar to be in that state than to not be in it. I see this in adults too, who I work with. So children who have had this early trauma, and particularly, as I say, exposure to threat, fear, aggression, violence, even, I say even, it doesn't, not to diminish it, but ongoing potential threats of these things, it gives them a very biological and physiological and emotional relationship with fear, threat, and danger. So it isn't necessarily what you would see in a child who has not had this. It's normal to feel and be scared when something is scary, so for my granddaughter who's heading up towards 3, that can be pretty much anything, of course, potentially. I remember taking it to the farm one day, and a sheep suddenly went really loudly. Now, in that moment, of course, her system, it was so unexpected and so loud, went into a state of fear. But then she was able to connect with me, one of her safe nervous system, safe people, and come back to feeling and being okay again. But what we see with children who have this complex relationship with being stuck in this ongoing state of fear is it's very, very different. And of course, every child's nervous system, their body, their brain has gone through very, very different experiences, very, very unique to them. So generalizations are difficult to make, and probably we should never make them, but these are observations. So some children, the opposite of this, you'll know children who, and young people who, the seemingly things that to you or to me don't seem like a big deal, and yet they become terrified really, really easily. And it spins out of control very, very quickly. So you can imagine a time like Halloween where there's a lot of quite scary images and things that you might just see walking down the street, or when you go in the shops, bloody eyeballs and all kinds of things that personally I don't enjoy looking at all. For some children, that's not going to feel great, and they might even not know why they've suddenly had a big reaction to something, but they just caught an image out of the corner of their eye. So we've got children who have this hypersensitivity to anything that looks frightening to their system, and then we have other children who seem to have no sensitization to it. and they seem to want to have these extreme dark experiences with horror and fear and violence. And some of them then, again, I used to do a lot of work with foster carers, and many of the foster carers and kinship carers would tell me this, is that the children they were raising and caring for would often share with them very dark things they would say that were full of, real complex horror and violence. So many children, they may not be talking about it to you, but they are thinking in this way a great deal of the time. So we just need to be aware of that and not miss those children, because it's easy to, isn't it, if they're not actually sharing it with us. And some children, because of what they've been told about themselves or what they've been constantly exposed to, they feel that that is their world, the world of horror and zombies and apocalypses and all those kind of things. It feels so familiar for them that they can almost operate better in that world than they can in the real world, where things are actually not like that at all. That's much harder for them. And they may have grown up being told all kinds of things, so they feel that they don't deserve the nicer things in life. They deserve to feel scared, to believe that terrible things are going to happen to them all the time at any moment. So children, they definitely experience horror and images of horror and films and all that kind of thing in very, very different ways that they're not going to be able to explain to you, which is why the pressure is not on you to figure out every child's needs. It's impossible. But to be in that place of curiosity and kind of have your antennae, your radars, a bit more switched on in the week leading up to Halloween, and certainly the week after than you normally do. So children, all different experiences, and taking part in Halloween, again, this is a very complex thing for many, many children. It's become a huge marketing exercise, of course, because there are products to sell, there's money to be made. And in my lifetime on this planet, we've gone from not having trick or treat in this country to it being the norm. My son transitioned kind of through this. He didn't ever go trick-or-treating, but he would go to a little Halloween party one of his friends would have. So it was around in his era, but definitely not in mine. Nowadays, as I say, for parents and for carers and for professionals, you are working with children who this whole build up to Halloween, because it's so targeted at having the sweets, the costume, the right makeup, the right accessories, everything. And this is all ages of children, targeted. You're missing out if you don't have this. And for some children, this creates huge anxiety. So as a foster carer, it was very normal for me to have children staying with me who were asking every 2 minutes about everything. So they were asking, as they were eating, say, their breakfast, they were asking about what were they going to have for lunch. Could they see it? Could they see it in the fridge? Could they see it in the cupboard? Then 2 minutes later, they might be asking again. Or if we were going somewhere, they'd need to know where they were going to get their food when. Of course they did, because they had been deprived of food. So, anyone who's caring for a child whether they are children who are being, raised and cared for by foster carers and kinship carers, or they are children who have been manipulated by consequences, by people saying, you better be good. If you're not good, then I'm going to give all your sweets to your sister, or you're not going trick-or-treating. This starts building up huge anxiety in the weeks in the run-up. because they're you know, they want the sugar, they want the sweets, they want the things, they physically crave them, but they also emotionally, there's this thing, you know, and am I going to get more? It might be a competition amongst their peers, who knows? But it certainly can become, for some children, an underlying worry all the time. And then, of course, for parents and carers, but this may also, you know, involve you as professionals, they may be asking all the time, you know, if they are definitely going to be able to go, and how big will their bucket be? And so if I fill my bucket and there's still doors to knock on, how can I empty my bucket? Can I, you know, and they'll be thinking things like, can I eat enough sweets in case someone takes the bucket off me? And all these things. It's so sad. Children who have had things like this used to abuse them in some cases and manipulate them in others, huge anxiety about this. And they'll keep asking, because rationally hearing the answer, tragically, and again, have very first-hand experience of this, changes nothing. A way to address it that's better, so you're not necessarily going to stop them asking repeatedly, because that's their anxiety and fear, anxiety and fear, anxiety and fear, is to say, how does that feel for you to be so worried that for some reason suddenly you might not be able to go trick-or-treating? Now, they won't necessarily be able to answer you and say, well, you know, thanks for asking. I feel like this, and, you know, just give you a great long narrative about how they feel. But it's addressing the real need, which is the fear, the worry, the stress, the anxiety, the panic first, and then maybe, you know, you give a little bit of rational reassurance as well, which, as I say, you know, for children who are very anxious about all of this, it's not going to make any difference, unfortunately. It's down to the adults around them really focusing in periods like this and Christmas and other times. Their birthdays, same, around really focusing on yourself, grounding yourself, so that you have the energy to keep coming back in this very compassionate way. So children that, you know, they're immersed in accessing and watching horror, it doesn't mean that they're not scared. Again, the children have taught me this and continue to teach me this, is, and it can seem quite hard to grasp in ways. So they can watch really terrifying things, and then they do have all the images and the sensations in their bodies from watching them, but they just don't necessarily know they do or think of it in that way. And again, you know, if they say that they're scared about something, or I think there might be such and such under my bed, or can you check the cupboard, or you can, and, you know, I probably would. But again, it goes back to wondering how it feels for them to feel so scared that there is a zombie with an axe in the cupboard. That's the bit that always matters. And this is the thing to think about as well, is that as professionals, we might know, you know, someone's let us know, the parents or the carers, that these children, they are accessing a lot of horror and violence online. And so then when they seem to be scared about things that we as adults think, well, you know, if they can watch that stuff, then surely they can just walk down the corridor and go to the bathroom. Actually, it's not so. You know, if I told you how many parents tell me this, it doesn't, being immersed in horror and fear and terror doesn't make daily life feel safe. It really doesn't. So you might see behaviors that don't make sense if you know this about children. So just be very aware of that. Then nowadays, as with all things, and you will know this better than anyone, there's this huge long build up to Halloween. So as I'm recording this for you, I was creating this in August, it's now September. When I went to a shop a few weeks ago in August, full of Halloween stuff, literally could not believe it. So if you think about, for the children and their parents and the carers, there's this massive long build up. So no wonder some adults are going to get to the point where they're just going to go, do you know what, I'm not we're not doing Halloween. It's, it's cancelled. It's because it's repetitive, the demands, the wishes, the needs of the children. Can I have this? Can I have this? Oh, I got this costume. Now I don't like this costume because, Amory's got a better one, or because children are now raised in this world where they're looking at things online, they're talking about stuff like this, maybe they're seeing photos on Facebook of other children in this, and they want to fit in, or they chat with their friend when they're walking to school, and then they discover that their friend's got this amazing thing they thought what they had, and so it goes on. So big pressure build up for the children, and all this uncertainty, and they want the stuff, they want to look in that way, but actually to put maybe a mask over their face, they might try it and it feels horrendous. So now they reject it. They might want the makeup, but then when they see it on their face, it feels horrible, or they worry that they haven't got it right, or it's, gosh, what a complex world we have constructed for children. And particularly, as I say, children with any kind of early trauma, this period can really reactivate it in many complex ways, which we can't necessarily make sense of. But if we just have that at the front of our minds, oh, maybe this is what's going on for this child at the moment, then we're on a good track. And some children, and this is definitely me, whatever I experienced about people knocking on the front door, it's still very much in me. Now, I'm right by my front window. I can see my path. This is good. I like this. But if I couldn't, nights like Halloween, I would, even now as an adult, everything would be in darkness. I don't want anyone knocking at my door, even though I logically know it's probably just some children with their carers. But the knock on the door goes right through me. So you again will have children in your care of all ages who, if they're inside, the knocking on the door thing is going to, and they won't know this necessarily at all, feel and be very and then when they go to bed at night, then also not necessarily going to relax from that, because it could go on depending on the kind of neighborhood they live in. It could go on into the early hours. And then, of course, we know, I remember in the house I lived before, we didn't put stuff out. So frequently we got eggs chucked all over our front door. Yeah. So again, that can feel really scary, all these kind of things. And then for the poor adults in the lives of the children, there might be more tension at home. So the young person you're sitting with, you're working with, you're teaching, you're training, whatever you're doing with them, they don't tell you any of this, but there've been rows, there's been pressures, there's been arguments, there's been all kinds of things going on at home, because the young person or the children are demanding stuff that, particularly at this time when we are in a really serious cost of living crisis, the parents and carers have now got to find extra money for something that's only going to be worn for a few hours and then thrown away. And next year there'll be an expectation for a different one. So this is the world, that's been created now with clever marketing and all the rest of it. Children feeling like they are literally not going to survive unless they have the perfect this, that, or the other. And if children, sometimes the way that they seek connection at school is that they feel that they have to take stuff in for the other children to try and connect with them and befriend them, and the whole sweets thing and who's got them. Anyway, you get it. So lot of pressure, so extra pressure at home as well. There may be some parents, and I was one of these, who said, we're not doing this trick-or-treating thing. And there may be very good reasons for that: safety reasons, religious reasons, just like, for me, knocking on people's door and asking them for things is just, that's not a thing. I mean, if I was in a crisis, yes, but not give me your money is basically what we're saying. So my son he seemed always pretty okay with this, but as I say, there wasn't this huge marketing machinery around it then. And again, thinking about, there will be children coming into school the next day who haven't really slept at all that night because they've been waiting for the door, or they've been out till all hours around the streets trick-or-treating. Now, thinking about abusers, times like this, so, you know, Halloween, Christmas, all these kinds of special days and times of the year, so it can be an extended period, something like Halloween, depending on what day of the week it falls on and weather and all that kind of thing. Abusers take these days, these occasions, and they use them in very, very complex ways again to abuse. These are great opportunities. I use the word great in inverted commas. So thinking about sexual abuse, if using things like intentionally, you know, setting things up in the context of, oh, you know, to celebrate Halloween, we're going to do this and we're going to watch this movie and we're just going to be together, and purposely scaring them and then using comforting them as a way to then sexually abuse them, a child or a young person, how confusing is that? That's very, very confusing. And it's, as I say, a way in to then abusing a child or a young person. And with domestic abuse and violence as well, very much used in all ways to abuse the children and the safe adult. So things like making them go trick-or-treating whether they want to or not. It might be pouring with rain. Oh, you said you want to go, you're going, knowing that the children will suffer and the safe parent will also suffer. Or at the very last second, like going along with it all, allowing them to get really excited, get all their stuff, and then at the last second saying you're not going. So you can imagine the devastation for the children. And then, you know, if you're living in an abusive situation, you may as even at a very young child, know that to show how upset you are and frustrated and hurt and all the rest of it is really dangerous. So they have to then lock it all in. So it might be when they come into school the next day that their behavior is particularly confusing. Well, yeah, because they had to just lock all that stuff inside of themselves from last night, and you're their safe people and it comes out all over you. Or they might do things like forcing one child or all the children to eat every single sweet when they get back, taking all the joy out of it. Children either sick or go to bed feeling very sick, or they might, you know, do it themselves. They might take all the sweets and laugh as they eat them all. There are so many ways that abusers will use a situation like this. Or they have their child who they are targeting to be the child that has the strongest connection with them. So they are coercing them into being their ally and things. So they get all the sweets and all the costumes and all the rest of it. Sad, but unfortunately true. So what can you do? You are the people who are going to be with the children and the young people as they go through Halloween for many years. So really important not to assume anything. So with all these things like Halloween, as I say, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, Eid, all these big celebrations or big occasions or big everything, we can assume that children like them, that children enjoy them, that children are having fun, that it's all a bit harmless. Please don't assume anything. So don't assume the terrible, don't assume the wonderful Walt Disney World. Just be open and be curious. Most important thing we can do when we're in the lives of children. Remember for yourselves, there's going to be a lot of different energy and different states of anxiety and excitement and all the rest of it buzzing around you in your work environment. So extra in the week running up at least, and the week afterwards, extra focus on being calm, on being grounded. Really important. And just finding very simple, gentle ways to check in with the children. So just mentioning it, just dropping it into conversation, maybe, you know, just taking that extra care and extra attention, because we're not assuming that they hate it or they love it or they find it terrifying or We're just checking in. They will, if they can, they will show you and let you know. And not missing the children who seem fine with it, because they are often the children who've learned just to shut up, keep it all pushed inside, and don't say anything. So try not to get your setting completely full of images and, you know, stuff around, because as I say, for some children, whether they know it or they not, or they don't know it, seeing all these images of horror and fear and even pumpkin carving and all of that can be trauma reminders. So let's just tone things down. Ask yourself, personally, I cannot stand Halloween. I really cannot at all. But I know that about myself. And so I manage myself and my needs around that. So just, you know, get curious. Actually, how do I feel about Halloween? Have I ever thought about it, or just go with the flow? And it might be that you feel fine, which is great for you. So any of the children, any of the young people, any age, they might on some level be struggling. And as we know, that can be perfectly normal. And the main thing to focus on is trying to avoid rationalizing away from how they're actually feeling, and to have those conversations, not that they have to answer you, but for you to be genuinely curious about, wow, I wonder how that feels for you, that, you know, you're so worried that maybe you won't be allowed out at the last minute because that happened last year. So you might not be able to fix that for them, but you can jolly well care with every fiber in your being about how they're feeling about it. So always it comes down to you. You have this incredible role in the lives of the children. And, you know, what I have learned through many, many, many years of working with children and young people is you don't always know how much you matter to them. Sometimes they can tell you, and sometimes they can show you, and many times they can't. But you will always matter on some level. So at Innovating Minds, we've spent years now creating training and programs to offer you very specific trauma sensitive resources, training programs, support, a lot of ongoing support afterwards. If you're working with children and young people who have impacted and are victims of domestic abuse, or maybe children and young people who have ongoing states of anxiety, or maybe those who have ongoing states of what seem to be angry feelings. So we've always got more programs coming online because we want to give you these powerful insights and resources, because you're the people at the front line doing the work. So always check out our website and email us any questions you have at all about anything you see. We love a question, and we really, really always want to support you. And then don't miss the future webinars. We've got future ones planned, and different ones coming online all the time. So keep in touch with us and look out for the ones that will be coming for the rest of the year and next year too. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for all that you do for the children. And remember also to take care of yourself, especially over Halloween.